The first light of dawn crept across the quiet Queen's townhouse as Garrett Rhodes slipped the key into the lock, praying the hinges wouldn't creak. His breath still carried the fading trace of Sloane Mercer's perfume, sharp, floral, expensive, the kind of scent Evelyn could never afford and he never should have known. He stepped inside, shoulders tense, blazer slung over one arm, his shirt wrinkled from a night he swore he'd never admit to. Then his foot struck something. A sharp plastic clatter echoed down the hallway. He froze. Right under his shoe lay Caleb's police cruiser toy, the one Garrett had bought in a guilty rush during his late-night meeting excuse. The bright blue car, scratched from hours of play, sat abandoned in the middle of the floor, like a tiny witness waiting for him. At the end of the hallway, curled on the living room couch, Caleb slept in his sweatshirt, small arms wrapped around a blanket as if he'd waited until his eyes couldn't stay open. Beside him, a lamp burned low, proof he'd been awake far too late. And in the armchair next to him, Evelyn Rhodes stirred. Her hair was messy from the long night. Her eyes were puffy, not from sleep but from the exhaustion of worrying alone. She blinked, adjusting to the morning light, and then her gaze found Garrett, shirt half tucked, tie missing, hair tousled, carrying the unmistakable scent of betrayal. She didn't speak at first. The silence said enough. Garrett swallowed. There was a crisis at the office. I had to stay. I didn't want to wake you. Her eyes dropped to his shirt buttons, done unevenly. She always buttoned them for him when he rushed for work. He never made mistakes like that. Her gaze rose again, slower this time, and the pain behind it cut deeper than any accusation. "Caleb waited for you," she whispered, voice trembling just enough to betray the hurt she tried to hide. "He thought you were coming home to read him the new book. He kept asking." Garrett shoved his hands into his pockets. His thumb brushed over something soft, a silk ribbon he didn't remember taking from Sloane's hair. Panic shot through him. He kept his hands down. "He shouldn't wait up," Garrett muttered, harsher than intended. "He knows I work late." "He's 5, Evelyn replied quietly. "He only knows his dad didn't come home." A beat of silence. A siren wailed in the distance, distant but haunting. Caleb's toy police cruiser might as well have been echoing it. Evelyn stood, placing a blanket over their son. "We'll talk later, Garrett. When he's not here." Her voice was calm. Too calm. The kind of calm that meant something inside her had already cracked. Garrett's stomach twisted. Because for the first time, he realized the toy he nearly crushed wasn't just plastic. It was the first fracture in a lie big enough to destroy everything he thought he controlled. Morning sunlight filtered through the thin curtains of the Rhodes' townhouse, painting soft stripes across the living room, gentle, warm, and painfully deceptive. To anyone walking past the windows, the home looked perfectly peaceful. A small family getting ready for a new day, a husband heading to work, a wife preparing breakfast, a little boy humming as he played with his favorite toy police cruiser. But inside, everything felt like glass about to shatter. Evelyn Rhodes moved quietly through the kitchen, her hands steady though her heart was anything but. She cracked eggs into a pan, trying to focus on the familiar rhythm of cooking, but Garrett's scent still lingered in the air. Not the scent she knew, the clean, cool aftershave he always used, but the faint floral perfume she had never worn. Twice she washed her hands. The smell wouldn't leave. In the dining area, Caleb sat on his knees on a chair, rolling his police cruiser along the table edge. "Mommy, Daddy's gonna read the book tonight, right?" he asked, eyes bright with the innocent hope only children still carried. Evelyn smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "We'll see, sweetheart." Right on cue, heavy footsteps came down the stairs. Garrett, dressed in a crisp white shirt and charcoal suit jacket, moved with the cool confidence of a man who believed he still controlled the narrative. He grabbed his Mont Blanc pen from the counter, slipped it into his jacket, and checked his reflection on the microwave door. "Big day," he said, brushing imaginary lint off his sleeve. "I've got a meeting early. Don't wait for me tonight." Caleb's face fell. "But Daddy, what about the new book?" Garrett barely glanced down. "Another night, buddy." Evelyn watched her son deflate. She held her breath, hoping Garrett would at least kneel, touch his shoulder, say something fatherly. He didn't. Instead, his phone buzzed, an alert flashing across the screen. He snatched it quickly, but not quickly enough. Evelyn saw the name. Sloan. Her stomach turned cold. Garrett tucked the phone away with a shallow breath. "I'll call you later," he told Evelyn, but his eyes avoided hers entirely. He headed toward the door. Caleb ran after him, tiny hands holding out the toy police car. "Daddy, you forgot to say goodbye." Garrett sighed, crouched just enough to pat Caleb's hair. "Goodbye, champ." No hug, no kiss, no real warmth. The door clicked shut behind him, leaving a silence so heavy it felt like the walls themselves knew. Evelyn stood frozen for a moment, spatula in hand, watching not the door, but the empty space Garrett left behind. A space that had been growing wider for months, maybe years. Then she turned, wiping her hands on a towel, and forced a soft smile for Caleb. "Come eat, sweetheart." But as she set the pan down, her fingers brushed against Garrett's suit jacket draped over a chair, left behind in his rush. And there, peeking from the pocket, a Cartier cleaning cloth. Her heart stopped. It started with little things, the kind of things Evelyn once brushed off because marriage, real marriage, wasn't perfect. People got tired. People got stressed. People drifted and returned. That's what she used to believe, but the cracks were no longer subtle. That evening, after Garrett rushed out the door with a clipped "Don't wait up," the house felt colder than usual. Not physically. Caleb still ran around in dinosaur pajamas, humming as he played. But emotionally, like someone had quietly opened a window and let the warmth escape. Evelyn loaded the dishwasher, trying to shake off the strange pressure in her chest. Every time she blinked, the Cartier cloth peeked through her thoughts like a sharp whisper. "That wasn't for you. It was never for you." Her hands shook as she scrubbed a plate. She couldn't stop imagining who the bracelet belonged to, and when he had given it. Her internal storm was interrupted when she noticed the iPad on the counter light up. A notification banner appeared. Garrett had forgotten to log out of his Apple account. A rideshare receipt displayed across the screen. Drop-off, the Plaza Hotel, 12:41 a.m. She stared at it for a long moment, pulse thudding in her ears. Her breath caught, her vision blurred. The room seemed to tilt under her feet. Then, "Mommy?" Caleb appeared beside her, clutching the wheel of his police cruiser toy, his small face scrunched with concern. "Are you sad?" Her first instinct was to lie, to wrap her son in a bubble where adults didn't break promises and love didn't disappear overnight. But her throat tightened, and all she could manage was a soft, "Mommy's just tired, sweetheart." He crawled into her lap, warm and trusting. The innocence of a child could both heal and destroy. "Daddy said he was working," he murmured, eyes drooping. "He said he promised." Evelyn froze. He promised. The words sliced deeper than the receipt, deeper than the perfume, deeper than anything. Because Garrett had lied to Caleb too, not just to her. Later that night, after putting Caleb to sleep, Evelyn wandered into the hallway. The house looked different, colder, unfamiliar, almost hollow. Garrett's office door was slightly open. Maybe it was instinct, or maybe she already knew, but she stepped inside. The room carried his scent, cedarwood, ink, something metallic. Papers were scattered across the desk, but one object caught her eye. A folded receipt tucked beneath his Mont Blanc pen. She slid it closer. Luxury car service, Round-trip client, Mercer Holdings. Her breath stalled. Mercer. Sloan Mercer. Her heart pounded so hard she thought the walls might hear. And then another sound emerged, a faint, muffled sniffle. She turned. At the doorway stood Caleb, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy, were you crying in Daddy's room?" She knelt, pulling him close. "No, baby. Mommy's okay." But she wasn't. Somewhere deep inside, something was beginning to break. Quietly, but irreversibly. The next morning, Evelyn woke with an ache behind her eyes, the kind that came from a night spent holding back tears. She moved quietly, preparing Caleb's lunch while the house remained too still. Garrett had already left. No goodbye, no explanation, not even a note on the counter. By midday, a thought gnawed at her. What if all the signs were wrong? What if she was imagining everything? The hope was fragile, but it was still hope, and she clung to it like a last rope keeping her above water. So she made a decision. She would surprise Garrett at his office with Caleb, just like the old days. A simple lunch, a reminder of the family waiting for him. Maybe then she would know whether the man she married was still in there somewhere. Caleb held her hand tightly as they entered the gleaming lobby of Park Avenue Tower, the marble floors reflecting the soaring glass above them. Garrett had always been proud of working here. "This place is the future," he used to say, his voice full of ambition. Evelyn approached the receptionist. "Hi, we're here to see Garrett Rhodes." The woman smiled politely, then hesitated. "He isn't in a meeting right now." "But he did step out briefly." "Step out?" Evelyn repeated. "Do you know where?" Before the receptionist could answer, Caleb tugged on Evelyn's sleeve and pointed toward the wide glass doors leading to the street. "Mommy, look." A pair of figures were walking toward the curb, Garrett and Sloan Mercer. They looked perfectly in sync. Too close, too familiar. Garrett leaned down, saying something that made Sloan laugh, a soft, confident laugh Evelyn had never heard from her before. Sloan's hand brushed Garrett's arm lightly, like a touch she'd repeated many times. Evelyn's breath caught. Her legs turned to stone. She watched, frozen, as Garrett reached out and tucked a loose strand of Sloan's hair behind her ear. A gesture he used to do to Evelyn when they were dating, before stress, before lies, before whatever this was. Sloan leaned into him, and for a moment, the world went silent. No traffic, no lobby chatter, no sound except the cracking of something inside Evelyn's chest. Caleb whispered, "Mommy, is Daddy hugging that lady?" Evelyn couldn't answer. She couldn't breathe. Then, Garrett's gaze lifted. He saw Evelyn and Caleb, standing there like ghosts from a life he thought he could hide. His face drained of color. He dropped his hand from Sloan so fast she flinched. "Evelyn, wait, this isn't—" Garrett stammered, taking one step toward them. But Evelyn stepped back. Caleb gripped her arm, confused, hurt, sensing something terribly wrong even if he didn't understand it. Sloan, unfazed, simply lifted her chin and observed Evelyn with a slow, knowing smirk, as if to say, "You're too late." In that instant, the last thread of denial snapped. And Evelyn finally understood. She had just witnessed the truth she'd been afraid to face. The drive home was silent. Not the peaceful kind. This was the silence that presses on your chest, the kind that makes every breath feel heavier. Evelyn kept her eyes on the road, hands tight around the steering wheel, while Caleb stared out the window, clutching his police cruiser toy without a word. He didn't understand what he'd seen, but he understood enough to feel hurt. The moment they stepped into the townhouse, the air felt wrong. The warmth that once filled their home had evaporated, leaving behind a strange, hollow chill. Evelyn set her keys down and leaned against the counter, steadying her breath. Minutes later, the front door swung open. Garrett marched in, his face already twisted with irritation. Not guilt, not remorse. Not even surprise, just anger that he'd been caught. "What the hell was that, Evelyn?" he snapped, voice low but venomous. "Showing up at my office like some obsessed wife? Dragging Caleb along to spy on me? That was humiliating." Her jaw trembled. "Humiliating? Garrett, I saw you, with her, laughing, touching her. How long has this been going on?" He scoffed, loosening his tie. "Don't be dramatic, it was work talk." "Work talk?" Her voice cracked. "You tucked her hair behind her ear." He flinched, barely, but enough for her to see truth flash in his eyes. Then the mask returned. "You're reading too much into things," he muttered. "You always do. This is exactly why we fight. You can't control your emotions." Evelyn swallowed hard. "Garrett, please, just tell me the truth. I deserve that much." Instead of answering, he poured himself a drink, whiskey, 2 fingers, and downed it in one swallow. "You know what your problem is?" he said, pointing the empty glass at her. "You've become boring, predictable. You stay home, you take care of the kid, you wear the same damn cardigan 3 times a week. I need a partner who understands ambition, someone who pushes me to be better, not someone who drags me down." Evelyn's breath hitched. "I drag you down? I left my job to raise our son. I held this family together while you climbed your precious ladder." Garrett slammed the glass on the counter. "And look how far I've gotten. Do you think I could walk into boardrooms with you constantly needing reassurance?" "Slow." He stopped himself mid-word. But it was too late. He had almost said her name. Caleb peeked from the hallway, small face worried. "Mommy, Daddy." "Why are you yelling?" Garrett pinched the bridge of his nose. "Go to your room, Caleb. This isn't your concern." The boy flinched at the cold tone, clutching his toy tighter as he disappeared down the hall. Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, not from weakness but from something inside her finally breaking. "You promised us a family," she whispered. "You promised him better than this." Garrett shrugged and reached for his phone. "Promises change. People change. You'll adjust." It was the moment Evelyn realized. He didn't just betray her. He didn't believe she had the strength to walk away. But that would be his first mistake. That night, after the shouting had settled into cold silence, Evelyn Rhodes felt smaller than she ever had in her life. Garrett had shut himself in his office with another drink. The door locked, as if she were the intruder in her own home. The house was dark except for the soft glow from Caleb's bedroom, where she sat at the edge of his bed, watching his chest rise and fall as he slept. She smoothed his hair back, blinking away the tears that kept gathering despite her best efforts. He didn't deserve this. He didn't deserve a father who walked out emotionally long before he walked out physically. When she finally returned to the hallway, exhaustion hit her like a wave. She leaned against the wall, sliding slowly to the floor. Her hands trembled. Her breath came out in small, uneven pulls. She wasn't just tired. She was unraveling. The living room felt ghostly. The half-finished laundry, the toys scattered across the rug, Garrett's abandoned whiskey glass on the counter. The Cartier cloth still sat where she'd left it, mocking her with its quiet glamour. And then her phone buzzed. She almost ignored it, expecting another automated bill reminder she couldn't bring herself to open. But when she glanced at the screen, her heart stuttered. A message from an unknown number. "Evelyn, it's Lucas Whitmore. I'm not sure what's going on, but you didn't look well today. Call me if you need anything." For a moment, she just stared at the text. Lucas. A name from a different lifetime. Back when she was a nurse, back when saving someone meant something, back before she became the shadow of a wife she hardly recognized. She set the phone down. She wasn't ready to tell anyone, not yet. Her knees finally gave out, and she sat on the cold hardwood floor, burying her face in her hands. The sobs came uncontrollably, quiet at first, then desperate, the kind that come from a place the body has tried too hard to protect. She cried for her marriage. She cried for her son. She cried for the version of herself she had lost somewhere between Garrett's ambition and her own sacrifice. In the middle of her breakdown, a small voice startled her. "Mommy?" Caleb stood there in dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes. He carried his police cruiser toy under one arm. Evelyn wiped her face quickly. "Sweetheart, go back to bed. Mommy's fine." "You're crying," he whispered. She opened her arms, and Caleb ran into them, clutching her neck tightly. His small warmth undid her all over again. "Did Daddy make you sad?" he asked into her shoulder. Her throat closed. She couldn't answer. She wouldn't make him carry that burden. So she whispered, "Mommy's just tired, but I'm right here, and I'm not going anywhere." Caleb nodded sleepily and rested his head on her chest. In that moment, something shifted inside Evelyn. She wasn't ready to fight, but she was done being afraid. She just didn't know yet that her greatest ally was already watching, and waiting for the moment she'd need him most. 2 days passed after the disastrous confrontation at Garrett's office. The tension in the Rhodes household thickened like humidity before a storm. Garrett came home later, angrier, more defensive, slamming doors and pretending Evelyn didn't exist unless he needed something. Meanwhile, Evelyn lived in quiet survival mode, holding herself together for Caleb, hiding her heartbreak under the routine of breakfast, laundry, bedtime stories. But the truth had already slipped out of Garrett's control. Late one evening, after Garrett left again for another meeting, Evelyn sifted through a stack of mail on the kitchen counter. Bills, statements, a charity flyer. Then her iPhone buzzed. A new message from an unknown number. Her stomach tightened as she opened it. "You don't know me, but I know your husband, and you deserve to know the truth. Check the audio file." Attached was a single voice memo. She hesitated, glancing at the stairs to make sure Caleb was asleep. Then she tapped play. Garrett's voice filled the room. Cold, confident, careless. "Evelyn, she's harmless," he said, laughing lightly. "She's dependent. She won't leave. She can't. I've kept all the accounts under my name. If she walks out broke." Another voice, Sloane Mercer, smooth as silk. "And the kid? He's attached to you, isn't he?" Garrett scoffed. "He'll get over it. Kids adapt. Besides, once the promotion is locked, I'll have grounds to push for custody. Evelyn can't afford a custody fight. She doesn't even know where half our money is." Silence. Then Sloane whispered something that chilled Evelyn to her core. "As soon as you get that VP position, we move forward. No more hiding." Garrett hummed in satisfaction. "Exactly. Once I'm VP, I'm untouchable, and Evelyn becomes irrelevant." The recording ended. Evelyn's hand flew to her mouth, stifling a sob. Her knees weakened, and she sank onto the dining chair as though the world had tilted. It wasn't just cheating. It wasn't just betrayal. He was planning to erase her. Financially, emotionally, legally. The man she had built a life with wasn't just unfaithful. He was ruthless. Her phone buzzed again. Another message from the same unknown number. "There's more. He's not who you think he is. If you want everything, meet me tomorrow at 2 p.m. Café La Brisa, Brooklyn. Do not tell him." Her pulse hammered. Fear, relief, dread, hope, all tangled into one. Who was this person? Why help her? How much did they know? 1,000 questions swirled, but one thing was certain. Someone wanted her to win. Someone inside Garrett's world. Someone with access. She tightened her grip on her phone. This wasn't just betrayal anymore. This was war. And for the first time, Evelyn wasn't the only one fighting. The next afternoon, Evelyn Rhodes stood outside Café La Brisa, a small Brooklyn coffee shop tucked between a flower stand and a vintage bookstore. The bell above the door jingled as she stepped inside. The warm scent of espresso mixing with the faint sound of jazz humming overhead. Her palms were damp. She kept checking the time. 1:58 p.m. She chose a corner table facing the entrance. Her heart pounded with every person who walked in. A mother with a stroller, a pair of college students, a delivery driver, no one who seemed like they'd secretly recorded her husband plotting to destroy her life. Then exactly at 2 As, a woman approached her table. Tall, mid-40s, sharp eyes behind thin metal glasses, a charcoal blazer, hair in a sleek bun. She moved with quiet authority, like someone used to boardrooms, not cafes. She sat down without asking. "You don't know me," the woman said, voice low but steady. "My name is Marion Pierce. I'm a senior auditor at Mercer Holdings." Evelyn blinked. "Mercer, as in Sloane's family?" Marion nodded. "I oversaw internal review for the merger proposal Garrett is bragging about, which, by the way, he's dangerously unqualified for." Evelyn stiffened. Hearing someone else say his name in that context felt oddly jarring. Marion folded her hands. "I sent the recording, and I'm contacting you because things are worse than you think." Her throat tightened. "Worse how?" "Garrett isn't just cheating," Marion said calmly. "He's funneling personal expenses through corporate accounts, hotel rooms, car services, jewelry, all charged as client meetings. If this continues, it could trigger a federal audit." Evelyn felt her stomach twist. "Why tell me? Why now?" Marion sighed, leaning back. "Because Sloane thinks she can run the company through him, and Garrett, blinded by ambition, is letting her, but he's sloppy, reckless. If he drags Mercer Holdings into scandal, hundreds of jobs could be affected, including mine." "So you're protecting yourself," Evelyn whispered. "And you," Marion replied. "You're the only person with enough motive to expose him without looking like a corporate plant." Evelyn swallowed hard. "I don't want revenge. I just want to protect my son." "That's exactly why you'll win," Marion said. "But you need protection first." She slid an envelope across the table. Inside were printed statements, highlighted expenses, and, Evelyn's breath hitched, an itinerary Garrett had used last month, listing a client retreat in Los Angeles. The hotel? The Beverly Hills Ritz-Carlton. 2 guests. 1 room. Her chest constricted. Proof. Actual, undeniable proof. Marion lowered her voice. "This is enough to destroy his promotion, his credibility, and his leverage in family court. Use it wisely." Evelyn stared at the documents, hands trembling. "Why are you risking your job?" she whispered. Marion's expression softened for the first time. "Because I watched my sister go through the same thing. She didn't get help until it was too late." Then she leaned in, her voice nearly a whisper. "And because someone you know is also watching out for you." Evelyn froze. "Someone I know?" Marion nodded. "Lucas Whitmore. He contacted me this morning." The world tilted. "Lucas? Why would he—" Marion stood. "There's more coming. Stay strong, Evelyn." Then she walked out, leaving Evelyn breathless, holding the first real weapon she'd ever had, and the terrifying realization that she was no longer fighting alone. Garrett sensed it the moment he walked through the door that evening, the shift in the air. Evelyn wasn't hovering anxiously the way she usually did when he arrived late. She wasn't pleading for answers or offering a lukewarm dinner reheated twice. She sat at the dining table with a calmness that felt foreign, unsettling, almost dangerous. Her hands rested on a plain envelope, and Garrett froze. "What's that?" he asked, trying to sound casual but failing miserably. Evelyn didn't look up. "Something we need to talk about." Garrett's jaw clenched. He loosened his tie, pretending he wasn't rattled. "If this is about earlier—" "It's about everything," she said quietly. He swallowed hard. "Evelyn, don't start." But she pulled the papers from the envelope and slid them across the table. Highlighted transactions, hotel bookings, car service receipts. the Beverly Hills Ritz-Carlton itinerary. His name printed clearly, twice. Garrett's face drained of color. "Where did you get this?" he demanded, voice low, almost a growl. "It doesn't matter," she replied. "What matters is that I know." He snatched the papers, scanning them frantically. His breath quickened. His hands shook. "You don't understand what you're playing with. This could ruin things." "You already ruined things," she whispered. Then came the moment Garrett's mask cracked entirely. He slammed his fist on the table, making Caleb's art supplies rattle in the center bowl. "You think you can use this against me?" he hissed. "You think anyone will believe you over me? I have the job, the salary, the lawyers. You have... What? A box of crayons and a nursing license you haven't used for years?" His words hit harder than any physical blow, but Evelyn didn't flinch. Garrett stepped closer. Too close. "I will not let you take Caleb," he said, voice shaking with fury. "You can walk away from this marriage if you're too weak to handle real life, but you will not take my son." Her breath caught. "Your son? He's our son." "No," Garrett snapped. "Judges don't care about your feelings. They care about stability, income, status. I can give him all of that. You can barely pay for groceries." Her heart twisted painfully. "You cut off my access to our accounts." "And I'll do it again," he snarled. "Try to fight me, and I'll drown you in court filings until you beg me for mercy, until you hand over Caleb because you can't afford to keep him." Evelyn felt the room spin, not from fear, but from realization. This was no longer a broken marriage. This was a battlefield. Garrett straightened his jacket, regaining his icy composure. "Get rid of these papers. I'm warning you, Evelyn. Don't make this uglier than it needs to be." She stared at him, breathing hard, hands trembling beneath the table. Garrett smirked, certain he'd regained control. But he didn't notice the shadow in the hallway. Caleb, clutching his police cruiser toy, eyes wide with silent terror, having heard every word. And for the first time ever, he wasn't looking at Evelyn for comfort. He was afraid of his father. The house felt different the next morning, heavy, tense, like the walls themselves were holding their breath. Evelyn Rhodes moved quietly, her mind racing with every threat Garrett had thrown at her the night before. She'd barely slept. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Caleb's terrified expression in the hallway, clutching his police cruiser toy like a shield. She had to protect him. She had to protect herself, and that meant gathering proof, real proof, before Garrett made good on his threats. When Garrett left for work, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the frames, Evelyn waited until his car pulled away. Then she went into his office. Her hands shook as she opened drawers, searching through documents, receipts, anything that could expose the truth behind his lies. Most of the drawers were filled with dull corporate paperwork, but on the bottom shelf, shoved beneath an outdated laptop sleeve, she found a small black folder. Her heart thumped as she opened it. Inside were printed itineraries, meal receipts, and photos of credit card statements. Yet Garrett had once sworn that he kept all finances digital. And tucked between the pages was the most damning piece, a toy store receipt dated 3 weeks prior. 2 identical police cruiser toys purchased at the same time. Her breath stalled. Garrett had told Caleb he bought the toy on his way home from the office, claiming he'd seen it in a window and thought of him. But the timestamp on the receipt told a different story. It was purchased at 11:27 p.m. Garrett wasn't at the office then. He wasn't home. He wasn't even in Queens. He was near the Plaza Hotel. And the second toy? Who was it for? Evelyn's stomach twisted. She pictured Sloane's perfect smile, the way she'd leaned into Garrett like she belonged there. Did he buy the toy for her nephew? Her cousin? Or, God help her, did he leave it in a hotel room while he was with her? Before she could finish connecting the dots, she heard small footsteps. Caleb stood in the doorway, rubbing his eyes. "Mommy? Why are you in Daddy's office?" Evelyn forced a soft smile. Just cleaning up, sweetheart. He walked in slowly, police cruiser toy clutched in one hand. This toy? I saw Daddy put another one in his bag one night. It looked the same. He said it was for a friend. Evelyn froze. A friend? Caleb nodded innocently. A lady friend. He said she needed help, but he looked scared when he said it. The room tilted slightly. Her son had seen more than she realized. He remembered more than Garrett expected. She crouched, pulling Caleb into her arms. Thank you for telling me, sweetheart. You did nothing wrong. And as she held him, something shifted inside her. Not fear this time. Resolve. Because the toy wasn't just a toy anymore. It was evidence. It was truth. It was the thread that could unravel Garrett's entire web of lies. And Evelyn was finally ready to pull. The courthouse hallway buzzed with low murmurs and shuffling footsteps, but to Evelyn Rhodes, it all sounded like static. She sat on a hard wooden bench beside her attorney, palms cold, heart pounding. The polished floors, the towering ceilings, the scent of old paper and stress, everything felt intimidating, designed to swallow people like her whole. But this wasn't about her. It was about Caleb. Across the hall, Garrett Rhodes stood with his high-priced lawyer, a man in a sleek gray suit who looked like he billed by the glare. Garrett wore confidence like armor, smoothing his tie, smirking when his eyes briefly met Evelyn's. He thought he'd already won. He thought the courtroom belonged to men with money and arrogance. He hadn't understood that desperation. Real desperation could make a woman stronger than any dollar he owned. Mrs. Rhodes, the bailiff called. It was time. Inside the courtroom, Evelyn sat at the petitioner's table, hands clasped tightly. Her attorney whispered, "Remember, truth is on our side." But truth didn't feel like enough when Garrett walked in behind a wall of confidence, carrying the polished presence of a man used to controlling every room he entered. The judge, a middle-aged woman with tired eyes and a voice that brooked no nonsense, adjusted her glasses. We're here to discuss temporary custody and financial arrangements during the separation. Garrett's attorney rose first. Your Honor, my client has grave concerns about Mrs. Rhodes's emotional stability. She has a history of erratic behavior, including entering Mr. Rhodes's office without permission, taking private documents, and involving the minor child in marital conflict. Evelyn's breath caught. Erratic? Unstable? He was already rewriting the narrative. Her lawyer stood calmly. Your Honor, what Mrs. Rhodes discovered in that office were financial documents showing misuse of corporate accounts and evidence of Mr. Rhodes's extramarital activities. A faint ripple moved through the courtroom. Garrett stiffened. His lawyer forced a scoff. Accusations without proof. We have proof, Evelyn's attorney said, placing a stack of documents on the evidence table. Hotel records, ride-share receipts, a toy purchase used to create a false alibi, and a recording in which Mr. Rhodes clearly states he intends to cut Mrs. Rhodes off financially and pursue full custody to destabilize her. Garrett's face drained of color. The judge lifted a brow. Mr. Rhodes, is this true? Garrett rose abruptly. Your Honor, that recording was taken without my consent. This is a witch hunt. Evelyn is trying to destroy my career because she's threatened by my success. Evelyn swallowed hard. I'm trying to protect our son. Garrett shot her a glare sharp enough to cut. The judge held up a hand. Enough. I have no interest in your marital disputes, but I am deeply concerned by the evidence of coercive financial control and the father's stated intention to manipulate custody. Garrett's jaw dropped. Manipulate? Temporary joint custody, the judge ruled firmly. But Mr. Rhodes, you are ordered not to restrict Mrs. Rhodes's access to funds. Any violation will weigh heavily in future decisions. Evelyn exhaled shakily. For the first time, Garrett wasn't untouchable, and he knew it. The courthouse steps felt colder than they should have under the late morning sun. Evelyn Rhodes walked down them slowly, still shaking from the hearing. She had survived, barely, but the weight of Garrett's glare lingered like a bruise. As she reached the sidewalk, her phone buzzed. A single text. "We need to talk. It can help you. L.W." Her breath quickened. Lucas Whitmore. The name hit her like a memory she had tucked away. A hospital room years ago, a man fighting for his life, her hands steady as she worked beside the trauma team. He had thanked her afterward, saying she had saved more than just his heartbeat. She never imagined she'd hear from him again. He asked to meet at a quiet bench overlooking the East River. When she arrived, Lucas was already there, tall, composed, dressed in a navy coat that matched the calm authority in his posture. But when he stood, his expression softened. "Evelyn," he said gently, "I'm sorry you're going through this." She tried to smile. It faltered. "You saw the hearing?" "No," he replied, "but Marion Pierce filled me in." Her eyes widened. "You know Marion?" "She reports to the charity board my foundation works with," he explained. "When she mentioned irregular activity involving Garrett, I recognized the name." Evelyn sank onto the bench, overwhelmed. "So you know?" Lucas nodded. "I know enough to be concerned. Garrett isn't just having an affair, Evelyn. He's playing with corporate funds, and he's digging himself into a pit he won't climb out of." A hollow ache grew in her chest. "He said he would take Caleb from me." Lucas's jaw tightened. "He won't. Not if you stay smart." He paused. "You're stronger than you realize." She shook her head. "Strong? Lucas, I can barely sleep. I'm scared all the time. And Garrett, he's ruthless. He knows the system. He knows how to twist things." Lucas studied her for a quiet moment. "That's why you need people who know how to twist them back." Before she could respond, he pulled out a thin folder. "These are internal compliance notes related to Garrett's recent transactions," Lucas said. "Nothing illegal yet, but enough to show patterns. It strengthens your case." Evelyn took the folder with trembling hands. "You didn't have to do this?" "I know," he said softly. "But I wanted to." Something in his tone made her chest tighten, not with fear this time, but with an unfamiliar warmth. She hadn't felt seen in years, not truly. Lucas leaned forward slightly. "Evelyn, someone like you shouldn't be fighting alone. Good people attract allies, even when they don't realize it." A gust of wind brushed her hair, and for the first time in weeks, she felt air fill her lungs without pain. "I don't know what comes next," she whispered. "You don't have to," Lucas replied. "Just know you're not alone anymore." And in that moment, sitting beside the man whose life she'd once saved, Evelyn realized something powerful. Someone had come back to save hers. In the days following the court hearing, Garrett Rhodes grew increasingly erratic. The once polished, calculated man who obsessed over image now stumbled through the house with a simmering rage he could barely contain. Every missed call from the office made him snap. Every quiet moment stirred paranoia. He had felt untouchable for years. Now the ground beneath him shifted like sand. Meanwhile, Evelyn moved differently. Not confidently, not yet, but with a steadiness that frightened him more than any accusation. She was no longer crying, no longer pleading, no longer reacting to his storms, and Garrett hated losing control. One evening, while he angrily typed emails in his office, Evelyn tucked Caleb into bed. Only after he fell asleep did she notice her phone vibrating. A message from Marion Pierce. "Something's happening inside the company. Be ready." Evelyn felt her pulse jump. Before she could respond, another message came through, this time from an unknown number, but the tone was unmistakable. "Your husband's days at Mercer Holdings are numbered. Sloan is making moves." Her breath caught. Sloan? The woman Garrett believed was his golden ticket? A cold realization trickled down Evelyn's spine. Sloane was never on Garrett's side. She was on Sloane's side. And now that Garrett's scandal threatened her family's empire, she would cut him loose without hesitation. That same night, Evelyn overheard Garrett on the phone, pacing the living room. "What do you mean they want to pause the VP nomination? That promotion is guaranteed. Do you know who I'm involved with? I have connections?" A beat of silence. Then Garrett's voice cracked. "What does Sloane have to do with this?" The fragile confidence in his tone made Evelyn freeze in the hallway. He listened, jaw tightening, eyes going dark. Sloane recommended who for the role? He whispered into the phone. Silence. A strangled laugh escaped him. "You're joking." But the tremor in his hand said he knew it wasn't a joke. He ended the call abruptly and sunk onto the couch, gripping his hair. The image was almost surreal. Garrett Rhodes, the man who once towered over her with arrogance, now shrinking under the weight of someone else's power. Evelyn remained hidden in the hallway, watching. For the first time, she saw not a husband, not a villain, but a man who had built his entire identity on a foundation of lies, now watching it crumble. She stepped backward, ready to return upstairs, when her phone buzzed again. A video file. Sender, unknown. She opened it, and her blood turned cold. It was footage from a corporate security camera. Garrett and Sloane in a conference room, arguing. Sloane pointing at him with disgust. Garrett pleading, Sloane laughing. Then 5 words that changed everything. "You were never the plan." Evelyn covered her mouth. Not because she pitied him, but because she understood something powerful. His enemies were beginning to eat each other alive, and she wasn't even fighting. Not yet. The next morning, the townhouse carried an unnatural stillness, like the air was holding on to a secret it couldn't wait to release. Evelyn Rhodes walked downstairs to find Garrett already dressed in a crisp navy suit, hair slicked back, jaw tight. He looked like a man preparing for battle, not for work. He didn't greet her. He didn't look at her. He simply stared into the mirror, adjusting his tie with trembling hands. "You're up early," Evelyn said quietly. Garrett finally turned, eyes sharp. "We need to talk." Her stomach tightened. That phrase, coming from him, never meant good news. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "I know you've been talking to people. I know you've been digging." His lips curled slightly. "You think you're smart, Evelyn, but you have no idea how deep this world goes." She folded her arms. "I'm protecting myself and Caleb." "Protecting?" he scoffed. "You're sabotaging, and if you don't stop, you'll regret it." She held his gaze. "Is that another threat?" Garrett smirked, slipping on his watch. "No, just a reminder of what happens when you bite the hand that feeds you." Evelyn felt a flicker of anger, quiet but burning. "I don't need your hand, Garrett." He stiffened. For the first time, he saw it, the shift in her. The fear had thinned. Something else simmered beneath her voice. He didn't like it. "You want independence?" Garrett said coldly. "Fine, let's speed this along." He opened a folder he'd brought downstairs and tossed several documents on the table. "I'm offering you a settlement. You sign this, you get minimal spousal support, and we agree on shared custody. No more fights." Evelyn scanned the papers, and her heart lurched. Minimal support, no claim to assets, shared custody with no protections, and a clause preventing her from mentioning his professional conduct. It wasn't a settlement. It was a muzzle. She pushed the folder away. "I won't sign that." Garrett's jaw twitched. "You will, because you don't have a choice. You have no job, no income, no leverage." But he stopped, because Evelyn pulled out her phone, tapped the screen, and turned it toward him. The video, the recording of Sloane sneering, "You were never the plan." Garrett went pale. "Where did you get that?" he whispered. Evelyn didn't answer. She didn't have to. He staggered back a step, breathing hard. That's taken out of context. It means nothing. Sloane and I are finished," Evelyn said softly, "and she's replacing you." The blow landed. His face crumpled, pride buckling under the truth. But before either of them could speak again, Evelyn's phone rang. A number she didn't recognize. She answered cautiously. "Hello?" A measured female voice replied, "Mrs. Rhodes, this is Evelyn Hale, executor of your mother's estate. I believe it's time we discussed your inheritance." Evelyn froze. Inheritance? Her mother left nothing, or so she'd been told. Garrett stared at her, confused, and suddenly very interested. "What inheritance?" he demanded. But for the first time, Evelyn smiled. "Not yours to know?" she said quietly. And at that moment something shifted in the universe. The first taste of Garrett's consequences, and the first spark of Evelyn's rise. The morning after the call about her mother's inheritance, Evelyn Rhodes stepped outside to find a strange quiet settling over the neighborhood. Too quiet for a weekday. Birds chirped, cars passed, but there was a tension in the air that hadn't been there before. She didn't understand it until her phone buzzed. A message from Hannah, a mom from Caleb's school. "Are you okay? I saw the post. I'm so sorry." Evelyn frowned. Post? She opened the attached link, and her breath hitched. A local gossip blog, notorious for exposing Manhattan executives, had published a blind item clearly about Garrett Rhodes. Park Avenue Finance VP nominee caught in messy affair. Legal battle with wife over custody. Sources claim unstable spouse causing drama. Though they didn't name her outright, the wording painted her as the problem. The comments were worse. Typical stay-at-home wife drama. She's emotional, he's successful, happens all the time. She'll milk him for every dollar. Her chest tightened. This wasn't an accident. This was Garrett trying to control the narrative. She felt exposed, humiliated, and angry all at once. But the real blow came at school pickup. Two mothers stepped away when she approached. A third offered a tight, pitying smile. One whispered, too loudly to be an accident, "Her husband's affair is all over the blogs. Can you imagine? I heard she barged into his office screaming." Evelyn's cheeks burned. She wrapped her arms around herself, suddenly aware of every wrinkle in her clothes, every dark circle under her eyes. Then she saw Caleb running toward her, waving his police cruiser toy. "Mommy, look, I showed my class my car." She forced a smile. "That's wonderful, sweetheart." But behind him stood his teacher, Ms. Langley, expression uneasy. "Mrs. Rhodes," she said gently, "I wanted to check in. Caleb seemed withdrawn today. He asked if his dad was going to replace him." Evelyn's heart cracked open. "He said that?" Ms. Langley nodded. "I didn't want to intrude, but children feel more than they can say." Evelyn swallowed hard and thanked her, but inside a storm raged. This wasn't just hurting her anymore. It was bleeding into Caleb's life. That evening, things worsened. As she turned onto their street, she saw Garrett standing outside the townhouse, shirt rumpled, hair mussed, phone pressed to his ear. He looked furious. The moment he saw her, he hung up and stormed toward the car. "You think you're clever?" he snarled. "You think leaking things about me helps you?" She stared at him, stunned. "I didn't leak anything." "Liar!" His voice rose. Neighbors peeked through curtains. "You embarrassed me publicly. The firm called. They want explanations." "Maybe they're starting to see the truth," she said quietly. He stepped closer, face inches from hers. "If you don't stop this, I'll burn everything down, and I'll make sure you go down with it." Evelyn felt her fear twist into something sharper, something steadier, because she now understood what Sloane, Marion, and Lucas had already figured out. Garrett wasn't just spiraling. He was cracking, and cracks always lead to collapse. For the first time in weeks, the house was quiet in a way that didn't crush Evelyn. It steadied her. After the chaos of the gossip leak and Garrett's street corner meltdown, she felt something unexpected settling inside her. Clarity. Not strength, not yet, but the faint promise of it. That evening, after Caleb drifted off to sleep with his police cruiser toy beside him, Evelyn walked downstairs and found the envelope from her mother's estate still unopened. Her fingers trembled slightly as she slid a nail beneath the seal. Inside was a single sheet of paper, simple, elegant handwriting. For when you finally remember who you are. Beneath it, documents detailing her mother's forgotten investment, a small share in a community medical center that had since partnered with the Whitmore Health Foundation, Lucas's foundation. Her breath caught. The shares weren't worth millions, but they were worth something. Enough to prove she wasn't financially helpless. Enough to show a judge she could rebuild. Enough to invalidate Garrett's threats that she would walk out broke. For the first time in a long time, Evelyn felt a flicker of dignity return to her chest. But the change didn't stop there. The next morning, she dropped Caleb at school early, then walked into a downtown bookstore, somewhere she hadn't visited since before motherhood. She wandered the aisles aimlessly, fingertips brushing book spines until one caught her eye. Atomic Habits. She had heard of it. People said it helped them feel unstuck, helped them rebuild piece by piece. Something about the simplicity of the cover drew her in. She bought it and tucked it into her bag, feeling oddly proud of herself for spending money on something meant just for her. She then took a bus across the bridge to Brooklyn and approached Whitmore Health Foundation, where Lucas had offered to help her look into part-time nursing opportunities. She wasn't sure she could go back to the long shifts, the emergencies, the emotional exhaustion, but she wanted to try. She wanted her life back. Lucas greeted her in the lobby with a smile that was warm without pity. "You came," he said. "I need to start over," she replied softly. He nodded. "Starting over doesn't happen in a leap, Evelyn. It happens in steps. Today is a step." They talked in his office overlooking the Brooklyn waterfront, about her qualifications, the clinics that needed help, the training she could resume. He didn't pressure her. He simply guided. Before she left, Lucas handed her a coffee. "You're doing better than you think," he said gently. Walking outside, she felt lighter. Not healed, not whole, but moving. Later that night, she sat at the kitchen table, reading the first pages of Atomic Habits while the house settled into its nighttime hush. For the first time in weeks, her tears weren't from heartbreak. They were from hope, because building herself back didn't feel impossible anymore. It felt inevitable. The courthouse felt different the second time, less like a place built to intimidate her, and more like a stage where truths finally stopped hiding. Evelyn Rhodes walked through the heavy wooden doors with her shoulders straighter than before. Not fearless, not yet, but no longer breakable. She carried a slim folder. Inside it, the inheritance papers, the compliance notes Lucas gave her, and Marion's documentation of Garrett's misconduct. Her weapons, her protection, her voice, finally sharpened. Across the aisle, Garrett Rhodes entered like a man trying to reassemble a shattered ego. His suit was immaculate, but his eyes were hollow, ringed with exhaustion. And for the first time, he didn't look at Evelyn with superiority. He looked at her with suspicion. His attorney leaned toward him. "Remember, deny everything, question her stability, emphasize your income." Garrett nodded, but his jaw twitched. The judge entered, calm but firm. "We are here to revisit custody arrangements and financial disclosures. Mr. Rhodes, we will begin with your documentation." Garrett stood, trying to project confidence. "Your Honor, I have provided all necessary statements." Her attorney rose. "Your Honor, that is not accurate." The judge gestured for her to continue. We have evidence Mr. Rhodes withheld financial documents, misreported corporate expenses as personal income, and provided false explanations for late-night travel. She placed a set of highlighted documents on the evidence table. Garrett's head snapped toward her. What is that? Truth, Evelyn whispered. The judge examined the papers. A subtle frown deepened on her face. Mr. Rhodes, these expenses do not match what you submitted. They are fabricated, Garrett insisted. They are pulled directly from Mercer Holdings' internal reviews, her attorney cut in smoothly. Verified by senior auditor Marion Pierce. The courtroom murmured. Garrett paled. And furthermore, the attorney added, Mrs. Rhodes no longer meets the financial instability criteria Mr. Rhodes alleged. She has verified inheritance assets and confirmed prospects for re-employment. Garrett blinked. Hard. Inheritance? The judge nodded approvingly at Evelyn's documents. Mrs. Rhodes, this changes your economic standing considerably. Evelyn breathed for what felt like the first time all day. Then her attorney delivered the final blow. We also submit video evidence of Mr. Rhodes's inappropriate relationship with Ms. Sloane Mercer, contradicting his claims of marital cooperation and stability. Garrett's voice cracked. Evelyn, you can't. This will ruin me. The judge raised a hand. Mr. Rhodes, control yourself. And then the unthinkable happened. The courtroom door opened. A bailiff whispered into the judge's ear. Her expression sharpened. Mr. Rhodes, she said, Mercer Holdings has issued a formal statement during these proceedings. You are suspended from your position pending investigation. Gasps filled the room. Garrett staggered as if struck. No, this is a mistake. Sloane wouldn't. She needs me. But Evelyn already knew. Sloane had cut the final thread, and Garrett Rhodes was falling. The judge's voice echoed through the stunned courtroom. Given this new information, custody will remain in Mrs. Rhodes's favor until further notice. Evelyn closed her eyes, not in triumph, but in relief. She wasn't losing her son. She wasn't losing herself. And Garrett's empire, once towering above her, was crumbling at last. The news spread through Manhattan faster than Garrett could deny it. By noon the next day, financial blogs, corporate forums, and even LinkedIn threads buzzed with one headline. VP nominee suspended amid internal misconduct review. They didn't mention his name outright, but everyone in his industry knew. They always knew. By late afternoon, the whispers reached the marble lobby of Mercer Holdings, where Garrett stood frozen in front of the revolving doors. He had arrived determined to clear the air, convinced he could fix it all with charm and excuses, just as he always had. But when he tried scanning his badge, access denied. A security guard approached, stiff and professional. Mr. Rhodes, you'll need to come with us to collect your belongings. Garrett's mouth fell open. There must be a mistake. The guard didn't blink. Sir, this is a directive from the board. Garrett followed him numbingly to the elevator. The ascent felt like an execution. On the 42nd floor, the floor he once bragged he'd rule, co-workers glanced up as he walked by. Some looked away quickly. Others watched with thinly veiled satisfaction. A few whispered, "Is that him?" Sloane really set him up. He shouldn't have tried to drag her family into it. Sloane. Garrett's heart hammered as he spotted her office door open. She stood inside, perfectly composed, wearing a cream-colored blouse and a calm smile. Sloane, he breathed, stepping forward. You have to tell them. This suspension is a misunderstanding. I defended you. I protected you. She held up a manicured hand. Garrett, don't make a scene. A scene? His voice cracked. You promised we would build something. You said you needed me. I said I needed someone, she corrected smoothly. Not necessarily you. His world tilted. "Sloan, please," she sighed, almost bored. "The board asked me if your conduct compromised the company. I told them the truth. It did." Garrett staggered. You threw me under the bus to save yourself?" "No," she replied with a polite smile. "I replaced you." The guard beside Garrett cleared his throat. "Sir, your office?" Garrett's legs buckled as he followed, each step heavier than the last. He packed his belongings, a few framed certificates, a Mont Blanc pen, a stress ball Caleb once gave him, into a cardboard box. Everything that once made him feel powerful now looked pathetically small. On his way out, he caught his reflection in the glossy lobby wall. The confident man who once strutted through these doors was gone, replaced by someone hollowed out, exposed, and terrified. Outside, cold wind hit his face as his phone buzzed with messages he didn't dare open. At that same hour, across the river, Evelyn prepared dinner with Caleb. The kitchen smelled of pasta and basil. Soft music played. For the first time in months, she felt peace settling into the corners of her home. She didn't know Garrett had fallen. Not yet. But she felt something. A shift in the air. A loosening of the invisible chains he had wrapped around her life. Garrett Rhodes had spent years believing he could not fall. But gravity comes for everyone. And his descent had only just begun. 2 weeks passed after Garrett's public collapse, and for the first time in what felt like years, Evelyn Rhodes woke without dread pressing into her ribs. The air in the townhouse felt lighter, as if months of tension had finally seeped out through the cracks. Morning sun warmed the living room. Caleb hummed softly while coloring at the table, his police cruiser toy parked neatly beside him. Life was settling. Not perfectly, not completely, but beautifully enough. The legal updates came slowly, then all at once. Her attorney called with the final confirmation. "Garrett's suspension is now a full termination. You have sole temporary custody, likely to become permanent, and your inheritance has cleared probate. The shares are officially in your name." Evelyn gripped the counter to steady herself. "So, I'm really going to be okay?" "No," the attorney replied warmly. "You're going to be better than okay." She hung up and let the truth wash over her. Relief bloomed in her chest so suddenly she had to sit down. Caleb looked up from his drawing. "Mommy, why are you smiling like that?" She laughed through tears. "Because, sweetheart, our life is changing." And it was. The next few days unfolded like scenes from a life she hadn't dared imagine. Evelyn met with the medical center board, now partly her board thanks to her mother's shares, and they welcomed her back with open arms. She wasn't just returning as a nurse. They offered her a transitional role in community outreach, something flexible, meaningful, and stable. "You've always had a gift with families," the director told her. "We'd be lucky to have you." When she left the building, the sky over Manhattan gleamed a soft gold, reflecting off the river like a quiet promise. Her financial footing grew steadier, her confidence grew louder, and her home felt warm again. One evening, Lucas stopped by with takeout and a stack of paperwork she needed to sign for her new role. Caleb greeted him with an excited shout, tugging him toward the kitchen. "Look, Lucas, Mommy made us a fort!" Lucas ducked under the blanket roof, smiling at Evelyn as he settled beside Caleb. "Impressive craftsmanship," he teased softly. His presence was steady, grounding, gentle where Garrett had been sharp, patient where Garrett had been dismissive. And when he looked at her, it wasn't with pity, it was with respect. Later, after Caleb fell asleep, they stood by the balcony overlooking the quiet street. Evelyn held her mug of tea close, letting the night breeze lift her hair. "You're different now," Lucas said quietly. "Different good or different bad?" she asked. "Different strong," he replied. "Different free." The words reached a place inside her she'd forgotten existed. She wasn't healed yet, but she wasn't broken anymore. Her life, her real life, was finally beginning. And with every breath she took, she stepped farther away from Garrett's shadows and closer to a future filled with something she had never expected to feel again. Hope. Autumn draped New York in gold the day Evelyn Rhodes felt her life shift for good. Leaves floated over the quiet path at Brooklyn Bridge Park, and the Manhattan skyline shimmered across the water like a brand new promise. Caleb ran ahead, laughter echoing as he pushed his beloved police cruiser toy along the wooden planks, its wheels wobbly but still rolling, just like them. Evelyn watched him, a soft warmth blooming in her chest. She no longer woke with fear gripping her lungs. The house was calm, financial pressure lifted, and her new role at the medical center filled her days with meaning instead of dread. Peace didn't feel fragile anymore. It felt earned. She was standing in the glow of that peace when she saw Lucas Whitmore walking toward them, hands in the pockets of his coat, eyes finding hers with quiet certainty. Caleb spotted him and sprinted back, crashing into Lucas's legs with a hug. "Lucas, I showed my car the city," Lucas grinned. "I heard it had a big day." Evelyn's heart fluttered at the easy warmth between them. Lucas wasn't a replacement. He wasn't a fantasy. He was steady. A man who arrived without demands, without ego, without the need to be worshipped. He showed up simply because he cared. And today, he looked nervous, for the first time since she'd met him. "Evelyn," he said gently, "can we walk for a moment?" She nodded, letting Caleb race ahead again. They walked along the waterfront, the cool breeze brushing their shoulders. Lucas took a slow breath. "You once saved my life when you barely knew me," he said. "You showed up when I needed someone, even though you didn't have to. I never forgot that." She blinked, touched. "Lucas, when I saw what you were going through," he continued softly, "I wanted to help. Not because I owed you anything, but because I care about what happens to you, and to Caleb." A warmth spread through her, steadying and quiet. He paused, then reached into his coat pocket, not with a grand flourish, not on one knee, but with a sincerity that felt deeper. "I don't want to rush your healing," he said, voice low, "but I do want to be part of your future. Only if you want that too." Her breath caught. It wasn't a proposal. It was an invitation. To safety, to love, to possibility. Evelyn felt tears sting her eyes, but this time they didn't burn. "I want that," she whispered. "More than I expected to." Lucas exhaled, finally letting his smile break free. "Then we'll build something at your pace, something real." Caleb turned just then, waving wildly. "Mommy! Lucas, come see my car go fast." They walked toward him together, step by step. Behind them, across the river, the towers of Manhattan glinted like witnesses to her victory. Garrett's world had crumbled by his own choices, and Evelyn's life had risen from the pieces he tried to smash. She had her son. She had her future. She had her heart back. And at long last, she had love that would not break her. So, that's how our story comes to an end. And if you're still here with me right now, my friend, then something in this journey must have touched your heart in its own quiet way. Maybe it reminded you of your own strength, or maybe it whispered a truth you needed to hear. Life breaks us sometimes, but like the Stoic Marcus Aurelius once wrote, the obstacle is the way. What hurts can also shape us, teach us, and lead us somewhere better. Evelyn's story isn't just about betrayal. It's about remembering your worth after forgetting it for too long. It's about knowing that peace is not given. It's built. And healing doesn't arrive all at once. It comes in small, steady steps, just like she did. So before you go, let me ask you, if something in this story stayed with you, even for a moment, would you do one small thing? Hit the like button, share this video with someone who might need it, and subscribe to the channel so we can keep walking through these stories together. You're not alone, and your next chapter can still be beautiful.